welcome back to more Space Engineers Programming with your host, Pilot Error 42. It's been a while, hasn't it? I'm sorry. I've had a lot of jetpack. Had a lot of work and other things that have really gotten in the way. And I did want to let some of the programming mature and change a little bit, because there's a lot of stuff that you can do now that you couldn't do before. That being said, I also apologize for the occasional bird chirping in the background. That would be my sun conure. And if you know anything about sun conures, you will know that they are loud. And any other bird, you probably wouldn't hear him right now because he's behind. There's two doors between me and him. But as you can hear, he's very upset that I'm not with him. Let's get down to business. Today we are going to move a rotor. On one of the older videos I've had, there was someone who asked about how to move a rotor using little buttons on they call a programmable block. At the time that they asked it, there weren't arguments to a program block. So the way that you would have to do it would be to have probably one block for forward, one block for backwards. And this button would call forwards, this one would call, counterclockwise and clockwise. But now we have arguments. So in here you can say, you can put an arbitrary string in there, which in this case I parse out to a float right here. But theoretically you could have as many arguments as you want as long as you specify some sort of format for them. I would recommend separating them by commas, and you can call on the on string, you can split them by comma, and you'll get a nice array of all your arguments. So my first thought with this was, well, you don't need a programmable block. You could just use a couple timer blocks and some buttons, and you kind of can, because the actions that you're going to need are to increase the upper limit and the lower limit. Well, change the upper and lower limits, which you can do in a timer block. You can reset the velocity so that you know which way it's going, and then either increase it or decrease it based on whether you're going left or right, whether you want to go left or right, or rather whether this is the timer block that goes left, that goes clockwise, or the timer block that goes counterclockwise. So this totally works. If I hit this button right here, it'll activate that timer block and it will move. And this one over here will activate the other timer block and it'll move. However, you can't go all the way around. If you go too far, you end up doing that. Well, why is it doing that? If we take a look at the rotor, it's because we went past 360. We either decreased the lower limit past 360, well, past negative 360, or for the other timer block, increase the upper limit past positive 360. And that will end up being unlimited, so then you end up with it just sort of, wait, that's the one I'll click on. It'll just spin indefinitely. Now, if there is I think I did it enough times. Another thing is the speed. You notice that way is really slow, because in the actions, the way to get, if I do another increased velocity here, the other one disappears. So I can go to page 2 and do increase velocity. Go to page 3, do increase velocity. And that way it will move faster now. So that does work. So that's a workaround for that. But if you were to use the rotor in a situation where you have sort of a logical stopping place, if you were like moving a crane to the left and right, and there were things in the way that you couldn't move past, then yeah, this would work. Unfortunately, if you just noticed, if I hit it again, it collides. No, it just smashes right into it. Because you don't get to decide, there's no increased velocity, or increase, I just look at it instead of trying to remember it. There is no increase upper limit by a large amount, increase upper limit by a medium amount, increase upper limit by a small amount. There just isn't that. There's only increase or decrease. So you are limited by that. This solution over here, using the programmable block, however, I can move it 30 degrees at a time, or 90 degrees at a time, or anything up to 360 or more, though I don't know why you would want to move it more than the entire way around. So, now that I've showed off it doing it, how do we do that? Okay. Let's look in the programmable block. The first thing I do, I've been starting to do this since I discovered the echo command. Since they added in the echo command, and then I started doing programmable blocks again. The echo command will, if you run it, it will put that information right here. Whatever you echo out, it throws it right there. So if you want to have a little bit of, if you have an issue and you want to know if you got to a point, echo got here, and then run it. And if it got there, if it displays that text, it displays the text, and it tells you it got there. That's a lot of what I use it for. In this circumstance, however, I use it to see how long the script runs for by showing beginning and ending time, show the last time it was run, what the argument is, and then here is the bit of debuggable text from when I was debugging it of here's the original value, what we're applying to it, and then the new value for both the upper and the lower limits. The program is pretty simple. You start off, you have to define what the name of the rotor is so that we can get it here using our standard grid terminal system get block with name, and we want it as a iMyMotor base. And that's the name of the rotor base. There is I believe there's an interface for the rotor head or something like that. I don't know. But you want the iMyMotor base. And then parse out our argument to get the amount that we're going to increase it by. If it's negative, it'll get decreased. We do have to do a bit of setting the velocity to be the correct direction. Because if we change the bounds and the velocity, let's say if we increase the bounds but the velocity is negative, it will spin all the way around. So if we move from, say, here to here, instead of going whoop, it'll go zonk. And that's, I mean, if that's what you want, then change the sign, and that's what you'll get. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted to take the shortest path. So here we check to see if we're decreasing it or increasing it. If we're decreasing it, but the velocity is greater than 0, and velocity goes in the same direction as your increase or decrease. So positive velocity will give you the shortest movement for an increase, and negative velocity will give you the shortest movement for a decrease. If it's not right, if it's less than, if it's decreasing, but the velocity is set for increase, we reverse it. I wanted to never, the programmable block, yes, you can set the velocity, but I wanted this to use whatever velocity is currently there. So that way you could have, say, another programmable block that changes the velocity by a button. So yeah, that's what that does. Next, we need to find the what the new value is going to be. So I got the value for the lower limit, and then you add the value onto it. But if it's more than 360, as we saw with the non-programmable block example, it'll change to infinite, and that's not what we want. That's bad. So we do a modulus 360. So that'll give us the remainder. So it's, I believe I've talked about modulo before, but the modulus operator, you read it as modulo, but it's the modulus operator. It's the remainder from division. So 360 modulo 360 is 0. There's no remainder, because you divide it by 360 and you get one remainder 0. That way, instead of going past 360, it will keep it within the bounds of negative 360 to 360. I think it actually keeps it between 0 and 360. Doesn't matter though. And then here's where I do my nice little echo where I say, here's the original value, here's what we're doing to it, and here's what we should end up. And now we need to set the lower limit and the upper limit. It is it's a property, but it's not in programming. When you say a property, you would set it with a you would say it would be set lower limit, and then you take an argument of a value, and get lower limit, and you would get back the value. The way Spanish engineers handles a lot of their things, they're not actually stored as floats, and you're not accessing it as a float. It's like a my fixed value or something like that. It's in the documentation if you're that curious. So we have like the actions and the properties, and the property name for the lower limit and the upper limit are lower limit and upper limit. So here we're setting them. Now if we are decreasing it, if we are increasing it, then this will fail. If we're going from 0 degrees to 30 degrees, since the upper limit is still 0, when you try to increase the lower limit to 30, it won't. And then it'll change the upper limit. So you'll end up with a lower limit of 0 and an upper limit of 30. And that's why I have this second set the lower limit. So that if this fails, we'll set it here. Because if you think about the way the sliders... Not a piston. Rotor. If you think about the way that these sliders work, I can't move it all the way up there. I can do this and then move it up, but I can't move it past that. And since... Ooh, that's interesting. Okay. Huh. So it'll let me move it past, but it'll snap back. So I'm just going to change that back to 0. If you were wondering what I can't do that. First I have to do this one. If you're wondering what I'm pressing, I'm doing Control left click to get the actual values, Control A to select all, and then typing it in and pressing Enter. There we go. Whoop. Ooh. That is the accuracy, because of the speed and the braking torque. If I put that really high, and if I put the torque lower, there we go. Sometimes to get the exact angle, you have to fiddle with it a little bit. So yeah, that's why I have these 3 lines here instead of just these 2 lines. Now, another way to do it where you don't make an extra call is to check to see whether you're increasing or decreasing, and then check to see whether you've wrapped around, and then call these in the correct order. I did that at first, And then 12, 14 hours later, actually no, scratch that. The next day, while I was doing something completely unrelated to anything on the computer, it occurred to me that if I just throw another change the lower limit, it'll force it so that when that one succeeds but that one failed, it'll just do it again. And that's all we have to do. So if and this can be any numerical value. So if I want to move it 42 degrees, it'll move 42 degrees. Negative 42, and it moves it back. So that way, when I have this set up, oh really? You can. Oh, that's cool. I forgot that you can do that. So if we set up the actions for this, there's when you're adding, let's see, rotor block. So that should be negative 30. So when you hit run, you get the opportunity to put in an argument there. If you put it in, if you do default argument, it will run with whatever the argument currently is. So if you just want it to repeat the last thing it did, that's what you would do. So it's going to be negative 30 degrees. Ooh, what? Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to reset this. I don't know why it didn't do it. Okay, run. Negative 30. Confirm. So this one is going to be 30. And this one's going to be 90. And this one will be 90. There we go. Oh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, not 1, 2, 3, 4. Thought something was horribly wrong. So yeah, that's. I don't really know what else to say about this. If you're wondering, what all of the actions you can do for a rotor, pause the video. The ID is what you put as the string, and this is what it's called. This will be like if you're putting that in the like a timer block or a toolbar. That's what the text shows. So here are the first set of the actions, and then the rest of the actions. The properties that you can set by the get value float, I believe, and set value float. That makes sense in my head. Are these? This is what they are. This is the type that they are. Single is something with just one value. There might be things with more than one value. I'm not sure. I don't know that any of the properties we have access to are of a multiple value. I'm pretty sure there aren't any. But yeah, here they all are. So if you're interested in changing them programmatically, these are what you use for your string values. If I feel motivated, I'll go into the Space Engineers wiki and update this information. I might not, though. I don't know, depending on... because you have to make a table and all that nonsense. Anywho, so, we're pretty much done for the day. I do have 2 more scripts in the queue. They are, however, both waiting for bug fixes before they'll actually work to completion. I've let me know in the comments. That's not the button I wanted. Let me know in the comments if you like it better when I have the text already typed out and I just go over it, or if you'd rather me type it all out start to finish. It's easier for me if I already have it there, but I know that if I'm watching something like this, I tend to absorb it better. If I have a problem absorbing it, I tend to absorb it better if I see it step by step and I'm not just blasted with all of it at once. So let me know. If you want to get in contact with me, well, you can always talk to me by leaving a comment on the YouTube page. But if you want to do more stuff with me via Steam, if you just send me a friend invite, I'm probably just going to reject it unless you've commented a bunch on the YouTube videos so I know who you are. But if I created a Steam community called Pilots Errors, because that was the best name I could think of. And I'll put a link to it in the description, as well as not this exact platform station on the workshop, but another one that just has this bit in it. And as well as the script will be up on the workshop separately as well. It's been nice having you. I do hope to be continuing to make these videos on a semi-regular basis, assuming my life doesn't get all crazy. I'm probably going to be moving sometime in December or so, so it might get a little sparse around the holidays. But anywho, I'm PilotError42. It's been nice having you, and until next time, see ya! Bye-bye now!